Chapter 17. Homesick. As they traveled farther inland, the air changed from the salty, seaweedy scent of home to the woodsy, sweet smell of earth, leaf, and flower. The rugged wilderness of Cornwall dissolved into gentle green meadows dotted with sheep and cultivated fields, golden with wheat. The scents were heady and rich and new. Granite and slate gave way to thatched cottages covered in red and creamy white roses. No poles of fish stood drying beside the doors, nor brown nets hanging on fence posts. There was no ocean in sight, and that was some consolation to Diggory. Maybe now his nightmares would go away. But the farther they traveled from Plymouth, the sadder he became. Somehow, leaving the ocean and all he had ever known made him ache for his father all the more. Diggory could only pray that this new master would be kind to them, for without their father, they had no one else to turn to. Their old life was gone now. They couldn't go back. The coach ride from Plymouth to Littlebury seemed endless as long days on the road stretched before them. Each night they stopped at a different inn. Though the boys slept on straw in the stable, Master Henry allowed them to take their meals with him and Will Button in the inn. "Tonight we will stop at the Inn of the Crooked Crow," Master Henry said. It was the 4th day of their journey. The boys were getting used to the stares of the innkeepers, as it was most peculiar for a man of Master Henry's stature to share a table with his servants. Even so, Diggory was amazed and delighted at the plentiful and delicious meals they shared each night. The bread was made of wheat, not barley like the loaves Aunt Alice had always baked back home. The ale was darker than the weak homemade brew they were used to drinking. Instead of pies filled with herring and pilchard fish, there were joints of mutton and beef. The 2 boys ate more meat in a few days than they'd eaten all year. It all tasted new and unusual to their Cornish tongues, but the brothers happily filled their bellies. They arrived at the Crooked Crow well after the supper hour. The room was almost empty, but for a few customers and the innkeeper, who agreed to serve the boys only after Master Henry bribed him with silver. The inn's low oak beams and white cobbled walls made for a cozy change from the cold, damp outdoors. Fishbone settled down happily with a bone beside the hearth, while Diggory breathed in the heavenly aroma of chestnuts that were roasting over the fire. "Some may call you strange, Master Henry, but none can accuse you of being stingy," Will Button said as he shoveled a large piece of mutton pie into his mouth. The glow from the hearth lit up Henry Winstanley's face, giving his dark eyes a golden glint. "They think me strange, do they, Button?" He took a drink from his tankard of ale. "And what do you think, boys? Do you find me strange?" Diggory almost answered yes, but the truth was, he had never met anyone quite like Henry Winstanley before. "Well, sir, Diggory began, but before he could finish, Master Henry reached into his waistcoat pocket. He pulled out a handful of powder and threw it onto the fire. There was crackling and a popping noise as the flames changed colors, from orange to bright blue, purple, and green. Diggory and Cubby leaned forward in their seats as they watched the splendid explosion of light. "So, Diggory, you were saying?" Master Henry continued, as if changing the color of fire was an everyday occurrence. Diggory was riveted by the colorful spectacle. "What conjurer's trick is this that turns a flame's color?" A man at another table called out, his beard twitching as he gave Master Henry a sideways look. "Could it be black magic you practice, sir?" "Nay, sir," Master Henry answered. "'Twas chemistry, not sorcery, I used. 'Twas simply the natural salts that acted on the fire." "Begging your pardon, sir," Diggory spoke up, "but this thing you call chemistry, is it what wizards use?" "Nay," Master Henry said, shaking his head. "I promise you I'm no wizard, just a dabbler in wonderment, you could say, and a bit of a bumbler, if you must know." He laughed out loud and rose from his chair. "Now I must search for a pipe and have a word with the innkeeper." He left the table and headed across the room. "Don't let the master's carefree manner fool you," Will Button whispered to the boys. "There's no bumbling at all about Henry Winstanley. They say that fortune favors the bold, and that's just what he is. The boldest and most fortunate man I've ever known." As they rose from their seats and were about to go off to bed, Will Button reached for the long leather tube that Master had left on the table. "We don't want to leave this behind," he said, "or the master will have my head. He takes it with him always. It's filled with his plans and drawings." Diggory's eyes fell on the case. "What kind of drawings does the master make?" "I suppose you'll have to wait and see for yourself," Will Button replied mysteriously. He pulled a short goose quill from his pocket and began to pick at the bits of mutton wedged in his teeth. "But I can tell you this, lads. Our Master Henry carries the sun in his pockets. He does indeed." Diggory didn't know how anyone could carry the sun in his pockets, but he hoped more than anything that he and Cubby could depend on the warmth of Master Henry's smile, for now he was their only hope for a home. That night, as the boys and their dog lay cuddled together in the stable straw, Diggory listened to the rain splashing on the thatch above. He thought about another rainy day back in Mousehole, when he and Cubby had helped their father to pull his thick brown nets from the boat and carry them home in the rain. He remembered how his father had thrown back his head and laughed as Diggory and Cubby hopped over the puddles. A wave of homesickness washed over Diggory now as he recalled his father's voice, so strong and deep and comforting. He would give anything to hear that strong voice now. He closed his eyes and listened, but all he heard was the sound of raindrops beating against the thatch. "Why did you have to leave us?" he whispered through his tears. "Why? Why? Why?"